we'll introduce. Should we introduce your girlfriend, or at least acknowledge she's here? Because I don't want to be like there's some strange woman in the back of the car.
There's some girl in his back seat.
It's a hooker I picked up. So let's get going because she's on the act. She's on the clock.
She's on, right.
Yeah.
Before we start today's show, please visit the sponsors, affiliates, and friends of the Stagecoach. The Square Reviews, brutally honest product and travel reviews for red-blooded Americans by red-blooded Americans. Visit them at thesquarereviews.com. TheGunFood.com has an extensive network of partners to connect you with your guns, ammunition, and firearm training. The Gun Food only sells ammo that they trust. Use RSWC as a discount code and save 5.56% on your order at thegunfood.com. PowerTac flashlights have combined premium craftsmanship, American ingenuity, and cutting-edge technology, creating a highly dependable tool that you can trust your life with. Go to powertac.com/RSWC and save 15% on your order. That's powertac.com/RSWC. Saber Pepper Spray has been making grown men cry since 1975. Find the link in the show description and help get the Stagecoach across America with every Saber Red purchase you make.
Shotgun with Charlie.
Riding shotgun refers to the practice of sitting next to the driver in a moving vehicle. The term riding shotgun came around after the time of the Stagecoach, when somebody used to sit next to the driver holding a shotgun, in case they ran into bandits. My name is Charlie Cook, and I drive a lot. I like to talk to people while I'm driving, so I interview people in my car while I'm driving. Welcome to Riding Shotgun with Charlie.
All right, before we start this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie, I want to say thank you all for watching the channel. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please make sure you do, because that's good for all things YouTube related. If you are listening to the podcast, thank you very much for tuning in and checking the show out. If you enjoy the show, if you get something out of it, if you get a chuckle, if you get a laugh, maybe if you learn something, share it with your friends, because that is how we get the Stagecoach across America. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie. Today we are coming to you from the hometown of Boston, Massachusetts, and I have with me Ed Monk and his better half, who are here for a convention. Ed, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
I didn't want people to wonder why somebody was in the back, but you said the clock is ticking with her, so
yes.
we need to get on it. Thank you so much for doing this. I sometimes forget how weird it is to call up people that are complete strangers and ask them to get in the car and drive around with you. So I appreciate this.
And not a problem.
I think we're going to get lost in friggin' Boston. You know, the good thing about Boston is it's an hour from Boston. So
we got half a tank of gas, so we can get lost for a while.
we do have a half a tank of gas. Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I had Matt Mallory and I had you on the show, the live show that we do, and we got a chance to talk about the incredible things that you do. But I get a chance to do it again, so I'm honored, man. Thank you so much.
Outstanding. Reach another audience.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so the first thing I like to do is talk about how people got into gun stuff, and you've been a gun guy for forever. You grew up in Arkansas?
Grew up in Arkansas. Grew up in a family with guns, but mostly for hunting. Yeah. I mean, they were there for self-defense, but it was mostly for hunting. So I knew how to shoot and operate guns. And of course, like a lot of men, I assumed if I knew how to operate them, I knew how to fight with them. And then luckily, I just happened to luck into meeting up with a guy named Jim Higginbottom in Kentucky. And that was my first introduction. And that was around 99, I guess. That was my first introduction to defensive gunfighting and defensive training and defensive shooting with a handgun. And that's where I learned that I didn't know a whole lot more than I knew. And so that kind of started my path as far as learning defensive. And then I attended front sight several times because the Army moved me out to California. Yeah. And then I attended TDI, Tactical Defense Institute in Ohio, a couple of times. Mm-hmm. And then John Benner, the owner there, asked me to come on as adjunct staff for weekends. I could come up and help train with him. And then I got in with... I've taken some training for some other people, but Range Master with Tom Givens, I've taken an awful lot of classes with him. So that's just kind of how I've come. And I probably started being an instructor with training wheels, probably for about 15 years ago.
Oh, that's great, man.
And then my brother, before I retired out of the Army in 2007, he built us a training facility on our family property there in Arkansas. So we have a place to do it, which we're very lucky. We have to keep reminding ourselves of how lucky we are to have that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
How big is your place? Like, how many acres do you have? Do you have like a 1,000-yard rifle range, 500-yard rifle range, something
The
crazy
total
like that?
property is 63 acres, but that's not. We have the original 3 pistol bays, U-shaped berms, 3 in a row, 15 yards deep, but you can shoot back further than that. Then now we have another 4th bay, which is now covered with a big metal carport, so we can shoot back to 15 yards and do things and get out of the sun or the rain or the sleet. We have a 360-degree berm that we want to build a shoot house in that we just haven't done yet.
That's cool.
And then my brother became terminally ill with long-range shooting, so he expanded and built a rifle range that can shoot out to 480 yards. And since we had to clear property for that, we built a new additional bigger pistol range, that you can shoot back to 50 yards, and we can put about 15 people wide on it. So when I host people like Tom Givens and other people, that's usually what we use for that.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That is really
Some
cool.
people live on a golf course. My brother, actually, his house is on the property. He lives on a gun range.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
We're
That's
lucky.
committed.
Yeah, and it's right off the interstate, so it's real easy to get to.
Oh, that's even better. That's even better. Let's talk about, all right, grew up mostly that thinking guns were for hunting, but got into training. You spent some time in the military, right? Like a lot of time.
24 years,
That's
4
a
as a
lot of time.
cadet, and then a little over 20 as an armor officer.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That is very cool. And once you got out of that, you got into teaching.
10 days after I retired out of the military, about a year after I got back from Iraq, I started teaching public high school, which I did for 4 years.
That's enough,
And that's
too,
what-
by the way.
Yeah. Well, I lucked out. I applied to many schools. The one that called me first and hired me was one of the top in the state. It was a really good
that's
school,
great.
really good staff, really good kids because they were really good parents. So
Right.
I really lucked
Yeah,
out.
the apple doesn't fall far, right?
Yep.
That is cool. That is really good. What
And
did
it was that experience going from a profession that day-to-day discussions and operations was dealing with deadly violence, and then plopped into the public
school.
teaching profession where we don't discuss violence at all. And
Yeah.
that's what kind of got me into the active shooter thing.
Right. Ballpark, what were the years that you were teaching? Like, what were there?
07 to 11.
07 to 11. Okay. So that was, that was just before Sandy Hook, right? What was it that made you go from saying, hey, listen, I have these skills that I learned in the Army to using this as a teacher, and not using them as a teacher, but saying, hey, listen, we need to implement these sorts of things.
Are you talking about active shooter stuff?
Yeah, like how did you, like you're in schools and looking at kids all the time and looking at teachers. Do they have liberal Democrat teachers down in Arkansas?
Well, I started in Kentucky. I retired out of Fort Knox, Kentucky. My first 3 years teaching public school is outside of Louisville, Kentucky.
Gotcha.
But it
Want to hear one of my favorite jokes?
go ahead.
How do you pronounce the capital of Kentucky? Louisville or Louisville?
You got to pronounce it like you got a mouthful of marbles. Like, Louisville.
It's Frankfurt.
That's right.
I love that one. Sorry.
That's all right.
All right, so you're in Kentucky.
So I start teaching. Again, I came out of the military.
Yep.
Where talking about doing and receiving violence is normal, and I'm there the few days before the kids show up, the start of the year, brand new teacher, and I get with all the other teachers, we get told, okay, our policy, our plan. If an active shooter comes in the school, you gather all your kids in the corner of your classroom and hold them real tight in a tight group in the corner of the classroom. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking, I thought, this is crazy. I mean, the lowest ranking private in the Army knows if someone's coming to shoot you, you don't group up, you spread out.
Right.
And preferably shoot back at them. But I'm looking around at all the other teachers and other staff of the school hearing this, and they're all shaking their heads up now. That's right. That's what we do. That's what we do. And I'm like, this is crazy. Or maybe they understand something about this that I don't. I mean, they've been in education for decades. Some of them have masters and PhDs. So that's what got me starting to look into this to try to understand it better. But it turns out they didn't understand it better than I did. They just have no stomach for, no experience with, and no desire to talk about violence.
Right.
So things that we're uncomfortable dealing with, we don't want to deal with, we outsource it. You know, if you don't want to cut your grass, you hire somebody to cut your grass.
Sure.
When the septic tank in our classroom at our training facility gets full, I'm uncomfortable with that. So I call some guy in a pump truck.
Right.
But no one's getting shot every few seconds that I'm waiting on the pump truck. So that's perfectly acceptable.
Right.
And so they just outsource. We have these people called cops, and they have guns, and they know violence. So we're going to hunker down and hide and wait the 4, 9, 12, 16 minutes, whatever it is, and let the cops come deal with the violence. And we're just going to get shot until they do that. And it took me a while to figure out what they were doing and why they were doing it. But that's what got me into this, to try to say, man, what we're doing, what everybody's doing, especially schools, is just, it's absolutely the wrong thing to do. It's like almost completely opposite of the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And so we keep seeing in big school shootings, you know, we get a high victim count. Well, it's very easy to understand why we get a high victim count, because because of what we do. We're making the shooter's job easy for him.
Right. Yeah, that really does make it a lot easier. Like I was saying before we started the show, I've been a teacher in public and private schools for 40 years, and I didn't become a gun guy until after I was in school for a long time. And the principal we had a meeting with the principal after September 11th, and he said that if anyone anyone that comes into the school, it's not supposed to be there. That was code for active shooter, because I don't think we called it that back then. But he said if anyone comes that's not supposed to be here, we will, he gets on the intercom, says the Eagle has landed, and everyone locks the doors and hides under the desks. And I was like, well, I'm in a different building and I don't have any desks, so this is kind of a problem. You know, this is not going to work out. If people start honking, you can feel free to flip them off. That's perfectly acceptable here.
Digital communication. Yeah. Well,
Nice.
The locking the doors and the hiding under the desk works very, very well every day the shooter doesn't show up.
Hold on a second. I got a friend of mine give me a call.
Uh-oh.
Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Wow, this is amazing. Long-time listener. I guess I'm the first and only time caller on the show.
This is true. Mark Lindblom is my good friend. We call him the BSKOG, which is the Bay State King of Glocks.
Oh, wow.
He only has 4 safes full of Glocks and ARs.
Not a bad start.
So, Mark, I'd like to introduce you to Ed. I'm with Ed.
Monk, it is a pleasure to meet you, sir. I've been following you for a while, quite a while. Not like Sting does, like in the police, like every breath you take, but from a distance, I've been watching and admiring all of your discussions and shows that you have.
Appreciate it, sir. Appreciate it.
You are very, very welcome, sir. And thank you for your long-time service before you started this last endeavor that you've been doing for a while now.
Well, thank you for your tax dollars, which allowed it.
There we go. There we go. Yes, it's that's the tax dollars they are. So, hey, and again, I'm glad you're on Charlie's show. I watched the one that you were on with Matt and Matt Mallory on Meet the Pressers about 6 weeks ago. So that was fantastic as well.
Mark is one of the guys who, he's a hardcore fan. He's great. He's only won 2 mantises from Matt and I's show. We're like, yeah, we need to cut this out. We have to put you on the list of people who cannot win things anymore.
So I guess I called in too many times and typed the answers in too many times. So
exactly.
Now I'm banned.
He's banned.
But so Ed, this is super cool that you're coming down for the the International Police Chiefs Association talk regarding active shooter scenarios or something along those lines?
Well, it's the International Association of Chief of Police annual conference, multi-day. I'm only teaching one class, one of many breakout sessions in it.
Wow. Well, cool. Well, they're going to be, they will take away a lot from your class and from the weekend in general. So good for them, and hope they'll learn some good stuff, especially in this state.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. So, absolutely love the 12-part series you had on ASP. That's on the you put out about a year and a half ago. on active self-protection, their app?
Yeah, I did. I came out and taught a large church out in the Phoenix area that has a private school. He came out and he and Mike both shot the live fire portion of the 2-day of training. And then a couple of years later, which is probably about 2 years ago now, I went back out to train, and Tom Yoxel came out and videoed the entire training class. So I think he has portions of both of those.
Nice. Yes, he does. Yeah, no, incredibly well done. Love all your analyses regarding math and time. It breaks down so well for those who have not watched your 12-part miniseries on that. It's in so much information. So super cool stuff. So thank you for all the time that you put into that.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. And then I'll ask one question and then let you get back on with Mr. Cook. So how long does it usually take for you to do your breakdown? Again, knowing the fact that a majority, that all of these active shootings take time, various time. How long does it take you to put your highly detailed analysis into breaking these down?
So I think what you're asking is, after a new shooting, how long until I've done a full analysis on it?
Yes, sir. And yes, sir.
Oh man, it varies, but I don't really start looking for information until at least a month afterwards, because in the first couple of weeks, there's always really bad, conflicting, wrong information. So, I'll look at the headlines, I'll hear what I hear on the news, but I don't go digging usually till about a month afterwards. But how quickly I can get the data and information where I feel comfortable enough talking about it and extracting lessons learned really varies, because it really varies on attacks of how quick information comes out that seems like it's true. And then sometimes last weekend, I was at a conference with Greg Stevens, who shot 2 of the active shooters in Garland, Texas. And sometimes I'll get to talk to firsthand people like that relatively quickly, and I'll feel better about the information. Other times, for some reason, some of the shootings, it just takes me a long time to get data that I feel comfortable with.
Outstanding. Great answer. And again, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I hope you have a great trip with Charlie while he's driving you to the conference. And thank you for your time, sir. And I hope you guys all have a great weekend.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, man. All right,
Thanks, man.
we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Yep, see you. Bye-bye.
And he's a great guy, man.
Energetic.
He is. He really is. He's got his own landscaping company, which is cool.
That's work.
It is work. And he's a guy that's my age, and he's in great shape. He's a tall dude, works out a lot. I'm going to say he works out a lot. He works a lot.
Yeah,
he's working.
You don't need a gym membership if you're a landscaper.
He doesn't. He's like, dude, I can't put weight on. I'm like, dude, I can't take weight off.
Need to work out a compromise there.
I know, right? He's like, you should come work for me in the summer. I'm like, let's not be ridiculous. Anyway, those are some good questions. All right, so we were talking about how you got into this. Did the teachers really? Did the light go on at the school you were teaching at?
Not initially, because they had so many years over and over that this is what we do and this will work, and they had no reason to think it wouldn't, because they'd never been attacked.
Right.
So they're like, yeah, and they like putting stuff in the plan that's easy to type, that's easy to drill, that's not controversial, that doesn't trigger anybody. So they put stuff in the plan that we already do. So turn out the lights. Well, I do that all the time. Lock the doorknob. Well, I do that at home all the time. Yeah. And gather in the corner. There's nothing that would controversial or upset. We're not telling you to do vicious, deadly, ruthless violence against another human. That makes people uneasy. So they tell them to do stuff that they're not uneasy with. And again, it works. Every day the shooter doesn't show up.
I love that line.
But yeah, and so that's what I say. We got to make a plan. And the shooter's not going to show up 99.9999% of days. So any plan you have has a well over 99% success rate.
Right.
But we have to make a plan for the day he shows up if we want it to do us any good. And what's going to show up is extremely violent and deadly. So our counter plan has to be extremely violent and deadly. We can't have a butterfly and unicorn plan to counter an extremely violent and deadly thing coming. And that's what the schools, when I talk to gun people, we tend to be a certain way and about how the schools react and their thoughts. And I'll get comments like, stupid people, just stupid people. No, they're not stupid people. They're extremely intelligent people,
Right.
higher educated, and they love their kids. It's not like they don't want to protect the kids. They love the kids. They just don't have any idea. It's like if you told me to program a computer, I just give me a hammer and let me get at it. But I don't have any idea why.
Right.
But as I started out just talking to my school, not in the meeting where I was told what the plan was, because I'm a snot-nosed brand new rookie teacher and you don't make waves. So I waited afterwards and talked to the assistant principal in charge of security, who was a great guy. And I said, well, you're telling me to pack in the room so that if I pack all my kids really tight in the corner, when he comes in my room, they'll be really easy to shoot. He didn't even have to aim. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, you're supposed to lock your door. Well, yeah, but it's got a big 2-foot by 3-foot glass panel that he's just going to break and open my door. And they said, well, he may not do that.
He may not.
And then when I said, I'm first floor window, I got 11th graders, got a big window. Why don't I just get the kids out and have them run to the post office, which you could see from my classroom window? And they said, no, we can't have a plan to run because it'll take hours to get accountability of the kids after we do that. So schools fully understand accountability. That's very important. They don't understand violence, so they're concerned about accountability. And I'm thinking when I hear this, well, yeah, it's easy to account for them if they're all dead on my classroom floor, but is accountability the goal here? And then when I said, okay, if the plan is we're going to stay in the room, which I would not have done, but if that's the plan, then instead of packing ourselves in the corner so we're so easy to shoot, why don't we fight him when he comes in? And I got told, Ed, we can't have a plan that we're going to fight the guy because our insurance will go up. So that was schools understand budgeting and they understand accountability. And so that was their focus. They don't understand violence. So now it grew from just talking to my school to other schools, and now I go nationwide. So a lot of times now, if I talk to like the whole faculty or the whole staff, the ground level people, the teachers, the janitors, the cooks, those people, when I show them the numbers, look back, because the principals, the superintendents are usually in the back of the room. They'll look back like, we are sitting ducks. He's right. If he comes here, it's going to be a slaughter.
Right.
And they look back at the people who make the decisions and the plans, and they know they're sitting ducks. And sometimes I'll get called or contacted by superintendents and principals, and they know if he comes here, we're done. So, but they just don't know what to do because they have no experience or stomach to do it.
Yeah, it's like saying, do you want your dentist to work on your car? Do you want your mechanic to work on your teeth? So they're smart people. This is not their area.
Some schools just want somebody like me to come in because it's a requirement. The state requires them to do active shooter training every year, so they're just looking for anybody to come in and do it so they can check the block. But some schools, and private schools more than public schools, some schools really want to try to do better. They just don't know what to do. So I love helping them when that's the way they are. They want to do better. They want to make a plan that actually will help save lives on the day the shooter shows up. That's what I live for.
Now, when I had you on the show with Matt, you were talking about the stats and the timeline, and this is something that Mark brought up as well.
Yep. It's all about the time.
Tell us about that. Like, get into this, because you're like, if it's this many minutes, this is how many people they shoot.
Well, if you look at the past attacks, and of course there are outliers. There's Tucson and Dayton, and Aurora, where the shooters were unbelievably aggressive and fast. And then there's Columbine and Covenant, where the shooters are really slow. There's outliers. But if you look at the general shootings, they pretty much have a shoot rate of new people. So in the first minute, because again, these shooters aren't going to go out in the middle of the desert or the middle of the forest to do their shoot. They're going to intentionally come to a crowded place where it's very easy to shoot their first person and then immediately go to their second and then immediately to their third and their fourth.
Right.
So the shoot rate kind of looks like in the first minute, once he starts shooting, in the first minute, he's probably going to shoot a new person every 3 to 5 seconds. Wow. In the second minute, it's going to start slowing down because people will take evasive measures, and the people he's previously shot don't count anymore for new victims. So in the second minute, it'll be probably a new person will get shot every 6 to 8 seconds. In the third minute, every 3 to 12 or every 10 to 12 seconds in the third minute. And his shoot rate will usually continue to decline unless he just happens to come across a pocket of new unshot people, like the Parkland shooter when he got up to the third floor and they were all packed in the hallway. Then his shoot rate went way back up again. So, I mean, it's math, but it's very, very simple math. The longer we let him shoot us, the more of us will get shot. Or the sooner we stop him, the fewer of us will be shot. So I like to focus on that end of the spectrum. It's very simple math.
Real quick,
Yeah.
right up here on the left is the Beantown Pub. And right here on the right is the Granary Burial Ground. And this is the only place in the world where you can have a cold Sam Adams across the street from a cold Sam Adams. I'll be here all week.
All right.
Don't forget to tip your bartenders and waitresses. Sorry.
Surely people walk over there and pour him a little bit, I would assume.
I'm sure. I think so.
Gotta believe that.
Anyway, so the math, the more people he shoots, or the longer it takes, the more people he shoots.
So another thing is, to make a plan, before we make the plan, we first start with what we want the plan to get us, the outcome. Mm-hmm. Before a high school football coach makes his plan for Friday night's games, he already has a goal, an outcome, and that is the score on his side of the board is higher than the score on the other side of the board when the game's over.
Yeah.
So that's what we have to do. The problem is schools aren't doing that, and most organizations aren't doing it. So we have to start with, when the shooting is over, when the attack's over, what's the maximum number of people you're willing to have shot? Now that's, in the Army, that's second nature. We do casualty estimations all the time for battle plans. It's just second nature, and we don't get squeamish about it. But schools don't want to talk about how many of us are going to be shot. So when I would ask superintendents or principals, if, God forbid, if a shooting occurs here, how many people do you think are going to get shot? It's, I don't know. I hope not many. God, I hope none. They have no plan. They're just hoping and wishing it away. And that's why they can't make a plan that has any effect, because that's where you have to start, is when the shooting's over, what do you want it to look like? And so what I offer them, it's not my school, it's not my church, but what I offer them, because it took me too long to realize they're unequipped to do this, single-digit victims as a goal that your plan will accomplish. I can't give you a plan that has any chance of zero. So I tell them how many shot people you want, hope for, and pray for. Those are different questions. We're not asking that. We're asking what's the maximum number you're willing to tolerate.
Right.
And so I can't give you a plan that has any chance of getting you zero. I can give you a plan that has an extremely high chance of getting you single digits. But it's all about math. The average shoot rate, once they start shooting, you pretty much have to stop him within the first 30 seconds of his attack. And that's not a guarantee, but it's a really high success rate of having 0 to 9 victims if you stop him within the first 30 seconds. Well,
that's pretty quick.
It is. So there is no way to call somebody who's not already there getting shot at to come stop it within 30 seconds. So that leaves you with, we, the victims, the people he is shooting at, that he came here to shoot, we have to stop him. That's just, mathematically, that's the only way to get a low victim count. So if you look at the timeline, by the time the first 911 call is heard of any active shooter attack, there usually has already been 10 people shot. Wow. By the time the first operator hears it. So if any school, business, church, if any organization is relying on 911 call to get the shooting to stop, they're almost mathematically guaranteed a double-digit victim count. 10, 20, 30, 40, depending on how long it goes.
Wow. That's insane.
So we have to fight back. So we have to, it's not, I'm going to this conference, I go to a lot of conferences that deal with schools and cops, and everything wants to make slight improvements. Like, let's get the cops there a few seconds earlier. Well, that might we'll keep it at 28, not let it get to 30, but that's not, let's talk about doing it before the cops get there.
Right.
The earliest cops getting to the active shooter after the first shot, the quickest you could expect is in the 4th minute. And by then we're already well into the 20s, heading to the 30s. And then schools will say, well, we have an SRO. So the person who's going to do the violence against the violence, he's already here, she's already here, so we're good. Well, high schools are more than half of all school shootings. So if you add high schools and middle schools, you're roughly talking about 2/3 of all school shootings. Well over 90%, the shooter in a middle or a high school is one of your own students who knows who the SRO is. So they're not going to go find the SRO and start their shooting right in front of the uniformed cop.
Right.
If they think or know the school resource officer that lives at the school, if they think or know the SROs in the cafeteria, they're going to go kick off at the art complex in a different part of the building, a different part of the campus where the school resource officer can't hear or see the shooting. So even the cop on campus has to wait for the radio call. If they think the cops in the front office, then they'll go start their attack like the cafeteria. They'll start it in a different part of the campus in a different building. So I show them a list of 13 schools that were all attacked by students of the school who knew the SRO would be there, or in the case of Appalachia or Santa Fe, there were 2 resource officers, 2 cops on campus. Didn't prevent them from starting the attack, and often it doesn't produce a low victim count.
Wow.
So the intended victims are going to have to fight back. That's the only way to have an expectation of a low victim count. What they fight back with, there's all kinds of options.
Right.
I just urge them to fight back with the most efficient tool available.
So a lot of times what we hear from teachers is, I wasn't trained for this, and I didn't go to school for this. This is not a part of my job description, right? And I've only taught here in Massachusetts. I can't imagine teachers not wanting to push back and saying that they don't want to, they're not comfortable with guns, they're not familiar with guns. What kind of training do they need in order to get up to speed without having, years and years of experience in shooting and all that kind of stuff? Like, how fast can a teacher go from, hey, I think I want to do this, to being comfortable handling a fire, loading and unloading and shooting at a silhouette-sized target?
Oh, you're talking about going the gun route?
Yeah.
Well,
like if they finally decide that that's the answer they need.
So the political term is arming teachers. Well, it's not a proactive arming teachers. It's not, you're a teacher here, here's your grade book, here's your Glock. Take it. You got to take it.
Right.
So we're not forcing every teacher to arm. And I hate using the word teacher because I don't care what their job title is. It could be the teacher, it could be the janitor, it could be the coach, it could be the counselor. What I care about is geographically where they are.
Right.
So if a school wants to go armed and they want to do it effectively, then we need to position our armed staff intelligently so that they're spread out. No matter where the shooting starts, at least one, preferably 2 for redundancy, of our armed staff can hear or see the first shot. Therefore, they can stop it in the first 30 seconds. Unfortunately, several armed school staff that I have worked with, they think just by having armed staff, they're safe, like having an SRO and they're safe. And they're like, oh, you have armed staff. Where are they? Oh, they're up in the administration building. It's the superintendent, the guy in charge of buses, and the lady in charge of the lunchroom contracts.
Right.
So they're in a building far away from the cafeterias and the playgrounds where the shootings take place. So that's not going to do it. So yeah, shooting, I think we like to make it appear to people like it's really difficult, and it's not. It's lining 2 things up and pulling a lever. The more training, the better.
Of course.
But if you go to gun route, it's really not that hard.
Yeah.
But if a school will not or cannot legally go armed, you mentioned William April.
Yeah.
One of his sayings that I loved was, to properly plan for violence, you must admit and accept the world is not as it ought to be. Well, one of the ways it's not as it ought to be is about 98% of our schools are not going to have armed staff. So
yeah,
when it's that way, so what's not debatable is we have to fight back if we want low numbers. So if you're not going to have guns, then you fight back by some other means. So I show them 5 schools that stopped an active shooter. Active shooter had a gun without a gun. 1 was a construction worker. 2 were staff members, but 2 were students that without a gun. We can do it because these are not Navy SEALs that are coming to attack us. They're deadly, but they're not that tough.
Gotcha.
So we can train the staff and students how to fight back. No, not jujitsu lessons. We teach them things. One of the biggest things is we got to teach them what reloads and malfunctions look like.
Yes.
So even if they're not gun people, we can do it with a video. One of my small little wins was I spoke at the School Resource Officer National Conference in Indianapolis in 23. And one of the SROs, I cannot remember from what state, that was in my class, he emailed me a couple of months later and he said, I have permission from the school to make a video showing what reloads and malfunctions, the motions that the shooter will use, what to look for. Because reloads and malfunctions are seconds of time where he can't shoot anybody, which is the best time to fight him or run from him when his gun does not work. So that's the first thing. We have to teach them that because they're always going to, a whole bunch of malfunctions with the active shooters because they're so untrained.
Right.
And I think a part of it is, yes, they do use the AR-15 quite a bit, and most AR-15s do not like to run dry. So if they stole Dad's AR-15 and Dad didn't lube it when he put it in the gun safe, then, so a lot of malfunctions, and they take a very long time to fix the malfunctions.
Yep.
So that's a great time to attack them or to run, which I can show them examples in schools where both happened.
Didn't I don't want to sidetrack too much. Didn't the shooter at the Clackamas Mall? He had a Betamax, right? Like a 100-round mag that jammed.
I don't recall specifically the type of gun that one had, but I mean, I can give you a list of malfunctions of the Pulse nightclub. We left him in there for over 3 hours, but his rifle malfunctioned at the 17-minute mark, and he could not. In fact, he made it worse trying to fix it. There was a active shooter student in a Washington school who brought dad's AR with 8 preloaded magazines, and when he tried to load it, he jammed it up, and he didn't make the first round come out. I have the video of Turnberry Towers in Vegas, a condominium complex. He went in the lobby, shot 1 round, and it malfunctioned. He was messing with it, trying to get it working again, but an armed citizen shot him to the ground. So there's just a whole long list. But if you watch these guys, they walk back, and a lot of them, they walk back and forth in their attack area. So they're going to turn their back on you eventually. That would be a great time to attack or run. Mm-hmm. You show them that coming through a doorway, even though they have a gun and you don't, that takes away a lot of their advantage of having a gun as they come through a doorway, especially with a long gun, which is a great time to attack him. So you just teach them very simple things like that.
Yeah.
And give them permission to. I see a lot when I work with schools. Once you tell the staff, teachers, custodians, you tell them you don't have to listen to what the intercom tells you to do. You decide. You have 3 options. They will all be bad. So choose the one that's least bad for you at that moment and aggressively execute it, whether that's fleeing or fighting. And once you tell them that and say, set up your classroom, set up wherever you work in the school, set it up to be prepared for the best fight you can give, the best evacuation you can give, then they feel free. Like, okay, and now I can get to work.
Right, now I can do something.
Female teacher at a private school in Washington State, when we did the walkthrough after the training, she had a piece of driftwood in her classroom as a decorative piece, but it was actually to smash the guy's skull when he came through her door. Once she was told, no, you don't have to huddle in the corner or huddle under the tables. You can actually fight back.
Yeah, that brings to mind the old phrase that the mind is the weapon, everything else is the tool.
Yep.
You know, I know one of the colleagues I work with said that she was working at a school, and I don't know, it's the first or second grade teacher had all the kids on the first week paint rocks that were like the size of a shoe, I guess, and she put those all around the room so that they had something they could throw at somebody if they ever needed to. You know, it's having that defensive mindset.
Yeah, and again, out of the 5 schools I show them, 1 was stopped by a construction worker, 2 were stopped by staff, but as many staff, 2 were stopped by students. So they'll look at me in horror and say, are you suggesting we actually train our kids to fight the active shooter? And I say, well, no, unless you want a low victim count, then yes. Right. It doesn't matter how old the person is that stops the active shooter. It matters how quickly we do it. Right. So if a 16-year-old student can stop his fellow student in 15 seconds, I would prefer that over a staff member who can get to him in 90 seconds or a cop who can get to him in 8 minutes. I care about how quickly it's done. I don't care the age of the person that stops him, the gender, the politics of the person that stops him, whether or not they have a badge is irrelevant. What matters is how quickly they can do it. And again, students have done it, and none of them were trained to.
Right.
They just did it because they could see that's what had to be done. One of them, Jake Riker at Thurston High School in Oregon, had already been shot once when he rushed and tackled the guy during a reload.
Oh, wow.
So that's what we got to teach him to do.
Yeah. I got a chance to interview John Castillo last year, and hearing him tell the story about his son Kendrick is, man, it kills you. You know,
yes.
Tears you up inside.
And what would the victim count had be had he and the other 2 kids not aggressively counterattacked?
Right. And if I remember correctly, Kendrick getting up was enough of a signal to the other 2 guys that they needed to get up and do something. And Kendrick was able to stop him so the other 2 could continue attacking him, which is pretty wild.
There's a church in California where the pastor, during a reload, and the shooting was actually, so I joke when I talk about it, I say it was a Presbyterian church, but I got to believe they had some Baptist in their blood because it didn't happen during the service. It happened during the potluck immediately following the service. And the pastor, during a reload, hit the shooter over the head with a chair, knocked him to the ground. And then I've got a cell phone video of like 12 people holding him down until the cops got there.
Wow.
So the victim count in that was 6, and 6 is bad. But how many would it have been had they just got up under the tables and hid?
Just waited.
Like in so many other ones.
Mm. Yeah, I was listening to, doing my research on you, and I've heard you say that we need to do things, schools need to do things like get bulletproof tables. I thought bulletproof tables was a good idea. Painting the hallways one color was a good idea. So rather than saying you're in the West Wing or the art wing or the science wing, you can say, look, you're in the green hallway. Yep. That's the one you should go to.
And that's for responders, for cops and EMSs.
Right.
Yeah. So again, we've been killing our kids and staff members with this lockdown drill, because that's what all schools love, because it's easy to type, it's easy to drill, and it doesn't disturb the academic day. It only takes like 5 minutes away from the day to do this lockdown drill where everybody stays put and does the exact same thing, regardless of where you are in relation to the shooter, which makes absolutely no sense other than it's easy to drill. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we have to get out of. We have to start doing drills that actually save people's lives. And so fight, flee, barricade are the choices that I give them. And we always consider fight first.
Right.
All the other organizations and all the other federal governments or our federal government that trains, supposedly active shooter trains, run, hide, fight. Some of the big national organizations use different words, but it's basically run, hide, fight. And they all say fight only as a last resort.
Yeah.
Well, if someone's coming in here to shoot 30 of us, why would fighting and stopping him be the last option we consider? So fight's the first option we should always consider, and it's the first option that organizations should encourage their people to do. Now, it doesn't mean everybody has to fight, because everybody can't fight. Everyone's not mentally and physically capable.
Right.
But the good news is we don't need everybody to. We just need one or two. We just needed Gina Som. We just needed Jack Wilson. We just needed Eli Dickin in the mall. So all we need is one or two. And again, they're not going to go out in the middle of nowhere to do their attacks. They're going to come to a crowded public place where there's 20, 50, 100, 300 people. Mm-hmm. All we need is one or two. And there are likely one or two people in a group that size that will fight. We just have to let them, and preferably prepare ahead of time so that they can get it done. But schools desperately want a nonviolent solution to an extremely violent problem. And unfortunately, that just doesn't exist. I go to these conferences every year, and there's probably going to be a lot of vendors here, and they're selling all kinds of stuff, promising if you buy my product, your kids will be safe.
Right.
So we're selling higher fences, bulletproof glass, metal detectors, security cameras, apps on our phones, panic buttons that will not save our kids. But very few products, I think, will help. So they want to do the lockdown drill, which is in the classroom, but high schools, the most common place they start is in the cafeteria. Mm-hmm. So I ask a principal in a high school, how do you lock down your cafeteria? Lockdown drill doesn't work there. But they want to go show me how it works in the classroom. Well, it's not going to work on the day he shows up in the classroom either, but let's talk about the cafeteria.
Right.
So the only thing I can think of there is to bulletproof the tabletops. So everyone is told, if it happens in the cafeteria when kids are in there, they flip the tables on their side, and that will not stop the active shooter, but it'll slow down his hit rate tremendously until whoever we have there to counterattack stops the dude. And then on the playgrounds, because elementary schools, they'll either shoot their way into your building or they'll shoot your kids on the playground, which has happened 3 times. Mm. The only thing I can think to do on the playground is to build what I call a ballistic wall, probably about 4 foot high, bulletproof. So cheapest ways I can think to do that are railroad ties, which you might could get donated, haydite blocks that you fill the holes in with mortar, or the plastic barriers you see out on the roads that are hollow plastic, but they fill them with water. Okay. And then you just paint them purple, pink, green, all the playground colors so they don't look like a ballistic wall, it looks like a playground wall.
That's a great idea.
And the kids are told popping comes from this side, get on the other side of the wall and hunker down.
Right.
And again, that won't stop the shooter, but it'll greatly slow down his ability to hit people until whoever you have there can stop them. And then while we're on the playgrounds, we got to get away from bumper sticker slogans and think they're not studying and understand the enemies. It's like lock doors for safety, lock doors for safety. We got to lock doors for safety. Well, not the door between the playground and the inside of the building while the kids are on the playground. Because if that door stays locked, because I met a teacher who said she got written up because she left that door open so the kids could go use the bathroom without her having to use her key.
Right.
I'm like, well, that door should stay open anyway. Because if the kids get shot out on a playground and that door's locked, they have nowhere to go and they are literally fish in a barrel.
Yeah.
And when we talk about hardening the buildings, that's the new thing, make it to where the shooter can't get in the building. Well, if it's a middle school or high school, most likely your shooter's already inside the building. So hardening the outside of that high school or middle school is probably only going to delay the cops and EMS from getting in. So we just like bumper sticker slogans and buying locks instead of actually thinking this thing through.
That's pretty incredible. So all this leads to well, not all this leads to, but let's lead it back to the business that you've got, the last resort training.
Yeah. So when we started out, it was just gun training, and we continue to do that. Handgun training. My brother does long range rifle. We do a little class to get your license. We do a lot of private lessons. We used to offer handgun fighting classes, but we got so busy doing these other things that now we only do that. But if someone calls up and wants to schedule it for their group.
Right.
So my brother, his specialty that he does is the long range rifle. I got into doing this active shooter thing, which was not real busy work for me until Uvalde. And I can't explain to you why it was Uvalde, because we had had Sandy Hook and Columbine and Parkland before that. But right. Uvalde, that was the one where my phone blew up. And since Uvalde, I've been going nonstop. So I do presentations to help understand the problem, the threat, and what works and what doesn't work. And I do that general population, or I can do it focused on schools, I can do it focused on churches, or I can do it focused on law enforcement. And then I also do live fire training. So I also do a presentation on how to do live fire training. I do that at the Elita conference every year. But then I do live fire training. I do an instructor level class about 4 or 5 times a year, and I do it mostly at my facility because we use 3-dimensional mannequin targets, and I've just kind of got my range set up to do that. It's just a logistical hardship to try to travel with that. But again, focus not just a gun class, because when I got interested in the active shooter thing and I started trying to go to training, when it came to a gun class that had active shooter in the name, I would go to it and they would spend 10 minutes or 30 minutes, an hour in a class talking about Columbine and Virginia Tech.
Right.
And then you go out to the range and we just shoot. And the shooting was just like any normal pistol class. It didn't focus specifically on that threat or for skills that would best work on that threat.
Right.
So that's when I started trying to develop my own training. So I've been doing that now for several years. And I do the instructor level class 4 to 5 times a year, and they fill up usually a year in advance, and people think that's really impressive until they find out I only let 10 people in a class. Because on the second day, when we go to individual scenarios, running 2 bays simultaneously, then there's not a lot of waiting around. And I've been to classes where there were 12 students and 1 instructor, individual scenarios, and you did a 2-minute scenario, then waited an hour, and I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, that's tough. I did the Faster Saves Lives level 1 class, and everything was cool, right? I think the part that I appreciated was the getting the medical stuff, because I know I'm lacking in my medical skills. But going to a real school and doing a shooting where you got some airsoft Glocks that shoot rubber balls that really hurt when you get hit with them, that was really cool, because we got to be the student, and I don't want to say we would game it, but after I was a student, I'm like, okay, well, when I'm the teacher and I get to carry the gun, here's how I'm going to do this. And I wasn't smart enough to realize that when I was the teacher, everything was going to be different. So that was a little bit of a problem.
But at least you're thinking it through, what we call wargaming. So that's you wargame different things of what could happen. That's the way you prepare. The problem with a lot of schools is they don't do wargaming, and if they do, it's against a cooperative enemy.
All right.
We'll lock our doors. Okay, so this guy's going to show up with evil in his heart and 3 guns and 1,200 rounds of ammo, and he's going to shake the doorknob and find that it's locked and go, oh crap, and go back home.
Right.
That's not who's coming.
Practical, right?
Or like the one Parkland teacher who said her plan, if he came into her classroom, was to stand up and say, I love you, because how could you shoot somebody that loves you? Well, he could.
Right.
So Red Lake High School had a metal detector. Well, he just walked in and shot the guard at the metal detector and walked right by it. So we have to plan for that kind of evil thinking, motivated, adaptive, creative enemy, because that's what's coming.
Very cool. This is great. I love this. I love hearing you talk about this.
Cool, thanks. I'm just filled up with it.
When Matt and I were going to have you on the show, I got onto the Active Self Protection app and I watched all your lectures as I was on the elliptical at the gym. I'm like, this stuff is great, man. Where's the next one? Where's the next one? Where's the next one? I thought it was amazing, man. I really did. We're almost out of time. How can people find anything else you want to talk about your biz, or how people can get you to come to their school or their church? Or
I'll come to your church, your school, your law enforcement agency, or if you just want to host me at any kind of public facility. Sometimes I'll show up and I'll do a series of presentations, one for cops, one for churches, one for schools, so different audiences, and I can zero in and talk specifically about their stuff.
Yeah.
So just call me and talk to me if you want to do that. Again, in this month of October, I will have been in 6 cities and 5 states.
Nice.
So that's what I do now. Have laptop, will travel. But I wanted to mention in August of next year, because I've got to go to so many events, conferences, and meet some of the heroes, the absolute heroes that are absolutely normal people, but they happen to be in very extraordinary situations and did heroic things. So I hear them, again, a week ago, Greg Stevens was at a conference where we were both speakers, and I got to meet him again. But I meet them all individually. And I kept thinking, why doesn't somebody bring them all together, or at least many of them together? So August 23rd of 2025 in my hometown of Whitehall, Arkansas, because I wanted to do it in my hometown.
What town?
Whitehall.
Whitehall, okay.
We got 5,500 people in that city. Not to try to impress you, but we got 5,500 people. But we do have a community center, so that's where we're going to host it. Greg Stevens, who was a Garland, Texas police officer when 2 radical Islam-motivated active shooters showed up in body armor and rifles, and he shot them both down and killed them with his Glock pistol. Jack Wilson, who you've probably seen the video inside of his church after a guy pulled a pistol-grip shotgun and shot 2 of his people. He shot and killed him. Stephen Williford, who the attack was on a church, but he lived houses down. So once he found out about it, went down and shot the guy outside the church. And then Pastor David George, who pastors a small church up outside of Olympia, Washington. After his Father's Day sermon, he went to Walmart with his family, and an active shooter showed up there, and he shot the guy to death out in the parking lot of Walmart after his church service. All 4 of those will be at this conference in Whitehall, Arkansas next August. They'll all have about an hour 15 to talk, explain. Some of them are going to show videos of their thing and take questions. And then we're going to end with a panel discussion with all 4 of them where people can ask questions and actually meet these great heroes. They're unbelievable people.
That's amazing. How do people find out about this? How do they get into it? Because you don't have a website.
I don't have a website, but talk with Tiffany Johnson.
Can we talk to him about this?
Yeah. I'm going to drag this analog dinosaur in. So we do. I've got a Facebook page, Last Resort Firearms Training. You can find or Ed Monk, my Facebook page. You can find the information there.
Gotcha.
But soon to come, and there's links or there's QR codes that you can go straight to the Eventbrite page and sign up for the conference.
Okay.
And I usually post my schedule of where I'm going to be. So if you see me anywhere in your area and you want to add something on front or behind something I'm doing, then that would be great too.
It's less expensive that way too.
Exactly.
Huh?
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, Ed, this has been a treat. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
I enjoy it.
This is a topic that hits close to home because I am a teacher, and this is how I didn't live through an active shooting, but teaching in schools was, something close to me. Like this topic after I became a gun guy in school shootings. I'm always trying to encourage teachers to have something, but I do try to keep my 2 worlds separate. Here in Massachusetts, a teacher, if the head of security writes a letter to the whoever's in head of security, if they write a letter, they can carry inside the school. So I had a friend of mine that was a principal. She took a class with me to get her gun license. We went shooting a few times. She called me into her office one time, and it's always, I always freak out when the teacher says, Mr. Cook, could you come into the office for a moment? Like, it doesn't matter how long I've been teaching. I'm like, crap, what did I do? Like, I didn't swear. I didn't do anything inappropriate. My fly was up. Like, I don't know what I did. Called me into the office, and she's like, hey, I just want to let you know my husband bought me a gun. And she pulls the gun out, and it's an LCR, right? A Ruger LCR. And I said, this is awesome. She's like, yeah, I can't carry it in school. I gave her the whole, you are the head of security, aren't you? While I'm nodding my head. I'm like, you should be the one to make this decision. And she's like, no, I've got to ask the priest. And I'm like, well, when you ask the priest for a letter to carry a gun in school, ask him for 2 letters. And it never worked out. So,
well, and sometimes people say don't ask Monk to come in and talk to you because all he's doing is pushing guns. And I'm not pushing guns. I'm pushing a low victim count. The only way to get a low victim count is an immediate counterattack.
Yeah.
You can counterattack with baseball bats. You can tackle them. You can run over them with your truck like the construction worker did out in California. But the most efficient way is with a gun. You ask a cop, you get a call, there's an active shooter, you respond to it, you can hear the shooting in the building. You going to take your pistol off and leave it in your car before you run in? Or are you going to go in with your pistol?
Yeah.
And they'll say, you'd have to be insane to intentionally go fight this guy without a gun. I'm like, that's what we're asking school staff to do in most places. So
very cool.
If you got to mow the lawn, you can mow it with an old rotary push mower, or you can mow it with a 0-turn. They'll both cut grass.
Right.
But let's choose the most efficient tool to get the job done. And
absolutely.
There's absolutely no doubt that a gun is the most efficient tool.
Awesome. All right. Well, listen, while we're here, thank you so much for being on the show.
Anytime.
I greatly appreciate it. We're going to have I don't want to say we're going to have links below, but we'll have a link to his Facebook page below. Thank you guys for tuning into the show. If you are not a member of the Second Amendment Foundation, you can join at sdrn.us. Sorry, you can join at saf.org, join the Second Amendment Foundation. sdrn.us is the Self-Defense Radio Network. If you've watched the show this much, you should share it with your friends because that is how you get the Stagecoach across America. Thank you guys for watching the show, and we'll catch you guys another time. Thanks a lot.
Loved it.